Daf Yomi, Tractate Bava, page 43a at the top of the page with the words O Giores Zacha, and subsequently married a Canaanite slave who had also been emancipated and become pregnant from him, or if she was a convert who became pregnant from a male convert, and both the husband and wife died without heirs, the assailant gains by not having to pay, since there are no heirs. In any event, it is explicitly stated in the Braita that the beneficiary of the compensation due to her, including that which she would have received during her lifetime, is not her husband, but rather her heirs. Rabba said this Braita relates to a divorcee. Since they got divorced, the husband does not inherit from her. Likewise, Rav Nachman said the Braita relates to a divorcee. The sages said in response, if she is a divorcee, she should also share in the compensation for the miscarried offspring. Why should her ex-husband receive the full payment? Rav Papa said the Torah awarded the payment of compensation for miscarried offspring to the husband, even if he is not actually her legal husband, but rather engaged in licentious sexual intercourse with her. Although he has no rights to her property, the damages for the miscarried offspring belong to him alone, as he is the father of the offspring. Okay, this is just the Talmud. This is not necessarily what's applicable for today. I'm just reading the Talmud here. What is the reason? The verse states, as the husband, the Baal of the woman, shall impose upon him, Exodus 21:22, indicating that damages are not collected by the woman, but by the man who engaged in intercourse with her, impregnating her. Therefore, if they got divorced, the ex-husband receives the payment. The Gemara asks, why do Rabbah and Rav Nachman explain this Braita as referring to a divorcee? They could have answered, in accordance with their own opinions elsewhere, Bava 124b, that it is referring to payments that are not considered to have been in the woman's possession during her lifetime, but rather are considered property due to the woman, which her husband does not inherit. Let us establish this Braita, according to Rabbah, as referring to a case where they collected money for the damage and pain, and according to Rav Nachman, where they collected land. As with regard to the right of a firstborn to receive a double portion of the inheritance of his father, he receives a double portion only of the property possessed by his father, not of the property due to him. In a case where money was owed to the father, Rabbah says if the heirs collected the debt from land, the firstborn has the right to a double portion, since it is considered property that was already in the father's possession. If they collected money, he does not have a double portion, as it is considered property due to the father. And Rav Nachman says if they collected money, he has a double portion, and if they collected land, he does not have a double portion. The Gemara answers that statement applies according to the residents of the West, that is Eretz Yisrael, in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who limit the rights of a firstborn to his father's property to the extent that they hold that he does not receive a double portion of any appreciation in the property occurring after his father's death. By contrast, when they state that this Braita here relates to a divorcee, it is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi that the firstborn receives a double portion even in the appreciation of the property occurring after the father's death. According to this opinion, clearly everything due to the father is considered to be in his possession, whether he receives his compensation in money or in land. The same applies to a husband who inherits the rights to inherit compensation for damage and pain inflicted on his wife. That is why Rabbah and Rav Nachman had to interpret this Braita as referring to a divorcee. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish says, with regard to an ox that killed a Canaanite slave unintentionally, the owner is exempt from paying the fine of 30 shekels. As it is stated, he shall give to their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Exodus 21:32. It is derived from the verse that the liability to pay 30 shekels is dependent upon the stoning of the ox. Whenever the ox is liable to be killed by stoning, the owner pays 30 shekels as compensation for the damage. If the ox is not liable to be killed by stoning, for example, if it killed unintentionally, the owner does not pay 30 shekels. Similarly, Rabbah says with regard to an ox that killed a free man unintentionally, its owner is exempt from paying ransom. As it is stated, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner shall be put to death if a ransom is laid on him. Exodus 21:29 and 30. This indicates that whenever the ox is liable to be killed by stoning, the owner pays ransom, and if the ox is not liable to be killed by stoning, the owner does not pay ransom. Abiah raised an objection to Rabbah's statement from a Mishnah. If a person admits, my ox killed so-and-so, or my ox killed the ox of so-and-so, this owner pays based on his own admission. Ketubot 41a. This cannot be referring to the payment of a fine, as a person who admits his responsibility for an act incurring a fine is exempt from paying the fine. Clearly, it must be referring to a payment for which one can render himself liable through admission. What, is it not referring to the payment of a ransom? If so, this proves that payment of ransom is not dependent on whether the ox is liable to be killed by stoning, as the ox cannot be killed based on its owner's admission alone. The Gemara answers no. It is referring to payment of the monetary value of the victim, although he is not liable to pay ransom, as the ox is not killed. Nevertheless, since by his own admission the ox caused damage, he is liable to pay damages. Abiah challenged this answer. If it is referring to the value of the victim, say the latter clause of that Mishnah, which is, if a person admits, my ox killed the Canaanite slave of so-and-so, he does not pay based on his own admission. And if, as you claim, the Mishnah is referring to the value of the victim, not to the 30 shekel fine, why should he not pay? Rabbah said to Abiah, I could have answered you by saying that the former clause, which discusses an ox killing a free man, is referring to the value of the victim, and the latter clause, which relates to an ox that gored a slave, is referring to payment of the 30 shekel fine. But I will not answer you with a forced answer. Instead, I will answer you as follows. Both this clause and that clause refer to the value of the victim. Just to continue the thought, starting now 43b, but there is a distinction between the two cases. With regard to an ox killing a free man, there is a scenario where the owner pays ransom based on his own admission. What are the circumstances? If witnesses came and testified that the ox killed a free man and is therefore allowed to be killed by stoning, but they did not know whether it was innocuous or whether it was forewarned, and its owner said that it was forewarned. In this case, the owner pays ransom based on his own admission, since the ox is liable to be killed. And the ransom is for atonement and does not constitute a fine. Therefore, even when there are no witnesses and the ox is therefore not liable to be killed by stoning for killing a person, nevertheless the owner at least pays the monetary value of the victim based on his admission.